Hi, everybody. I don't know if you can see outside the window. Here comes one of those Uber autonomous Volvos. It's probably hard to make out. Anyway, well, I guess they're semi-autonomous. Uber's trying real hard here in Pittsburgh. We see them up and down. Actually, there's another one. They do come down in groups at different times, and they're very recognizable because they're big XC90s, I think, with a gigantic spinning LiDAR on the roof. Anyway, it's not really what I was going to talk about right now. What you can also see outside my window, probably on the hillside and in the trees, is that we've gotten some snow recently. And nothing I like more than walking out when I go to leave for work, opening the garage door, and finding that my driveway, which is quite steep, is covered in snow with, even better, a layer of ice underneath the snow, just lying in wait. So that brings me to a commonly asked question about the Tesla that well, I've been getting it for years, quite frankly, and the answer has changed over time. And that is, how well does the Tesla do in the snow? All right, well, first let's consider my basis for comparison. This is a rear-wheel drive only Tesla. It is not all-wheel drive. The dual motor versions were not available when I got this car. I wish they had been. I probably would have gotten it. Although I will tell you that having that gigantic frunk up there, we pack that to the gills when we go on big family trips. We'll load the back and the front. I'm not quite sure how we would do it, trying to jam all of our stuff into a current Tesla that doesn't have all these open spaces everywhere. That's a whole other discussion about how Tesla has kind of been removing some of the distinguishing features of the cars over the years, even as they get bigger. But as a company, they get bigger. But anyway, we have that big frunk up there, which means we don't have a motor up there. And as a result, everything about this car is, in the wintertime, is somewhat hampered by the fact that it's only two-wheel drive. Yes, I know, in Norway, there are many Teslas. Norway also has a little bit different approach to how they clear their roads and things like that. So that's a whole nother, factor that is probably not taken into account most of the time. What I will say is that this car has always had snow tires on it in the wintertime. I used to put them on right around Thanksgiving, even though this part of the country doesn't usually have its first snow by then. And then I would take them off, like Easter. And I did that the first 2 years, and those happened to be very mild winters, and I ground those tires down and didn't really get much use out of them. They were great tires for the few storms that we did have, but by the third year, I was kind of holding off until I actually saw snow in the forecast, which is one of the advantages of doing it myself in the garage, is that I can put the tires on and off as many times as I want, and depending on what the actual conditions are going to be. So that's what I did. And this year, I think I kind of did the same thing. I don't think I put the snow tires on until, I think we were almost to Christmas, something like that. If you go back through the Twitter feed, you'll find I posted a picture when I put them on, because I really like the gray wheels, which happen to be my winter wheels. So everything I've done with the car in the wintertime has been on snow tires. And that makes a massive difference regardless of what kind of drivetrain you have in your car, or whether it's gas or electric. Tires are probably the single biggest factor you can make to improve your winter traction. You'll see that everywhere. They are not cheap. I think it's about $1,000 a set for the tires, plus you also have to have an additional set of wheels. I don't recommend yanking the tires on and off the same set of wheels. That's just asking for trouble. And I do have a duplicate set of tire pressure sensors, which it's actually the ones on these tires were the ones that were giving me trouble when it was really, really cold out. It's fine now, but I was getting warnings because one of the sensors wasn't working because it was frozen, or something was frozen to it. I'm not sure what. Anyway, the tires are the single biggest factor that you have any control over, aside from whether you get dual motor or not, which actually now I guess you really don't have any control over that either, because Tesla has once again killed off the rear-wheel drive version only Model S. So this is really a Model 3 issue, I guess. Having said that, there are some inherent advantages to a Tesla. A, it's quite heavy, so it does sink down into the snow or whatever's on the road better than a lighter car would do. And the center of gravity is very low, which helps on probably some of the lateral stability as far as going around turns. You don't have a huge amount of weight that's kind of swinging the car, sort of the tail wagging the dog problem that you sometimes get, especially in a taller vehicle. But at the same time, it's a lot of weight, and getting the weight going is only part of the issue, and that's where the dual motors would help you out, and it's also where the tires would help you out. but you still have to stop that weight, and that's where the weight works against you, as opposed to a lighter car. Like right now, I'm behind a Subaru Crosstrek, and which are superb little winter tanks. Those cars, I mean, they're just astounding. We don't have one of those. We actually have larger Subarus, but they are really good buys, and nothing electric comes close to that. If they would make an electric Subaru Crosstrek, oh my gosh, they would sell a ton of them. Anyway, yeah, they do have a hybrid, but it's laughable. Come on, Subaru, you know better than that. So you'll find that once you get the dual motor, you're able to get going, and yes, you can climb hills, and the stability control is very good, and the overall traction control and all that stuff is excellent. But when it comes time to stopping that car, you're not really at any greater advantage than anybody else. In fact, some people would say that because of the regen, you're at a disadvantage, because if you let up on the throttle very quickly, it immediately turns into a braking force, effectively, and that can cause some instability in the car. Now, definitely on a rear-wheel drive Tesla, if I let up on the throttle real hard on a snowy road, especially going downhill, the back end will absolutely wiggle. It's as if you kind of yank the parking brake briefly. But over time, you learn to adjust, and while some people would say that you should take the regen and knock it down to whatever the lower setting is, I can't remember what it's actually called on there. But I don't think that that's necessary. I think it's really more a matter of getting attuned to driving the car. I've never changed that setting. I like the regen to be strong. And in wintertime, when those situations present themselves, I've just learned to be gentle on the throttle, just like backing off on the throttle so the regen kicks in gradually. And then it's fine. Most of the time, when it's really cold, you don't have full regen anyway. So I guess that kind of makes it idiot-proof a little bit. Now, compared to the Subarus, I have two Subarus. I have a 2003 Baja, which doesn't have anything fancy on it. And then I have a 2015 Outback, which has all of the latest, stability control. I think they call it VDC on that car. And it can do individual braking of the wheels and all that kind of stuff. They're both very different in the snow. I've not had a chance to really go out and play with the Outback, but the Baja, being kind of a blunt tool in the sense that all it has is ABS and the all-wheel drive, is absolutely unstoppable. It's just amazingly good. And I'm not sure how that would compare to a dual motor car, because I've not also taken a dual motor car out and played in the snow, but I will say that the Subarus are they really handle well in the snow. That said, they don't have winter tires on those. I've never put winter tires on the Subarus because fundamentally I usually don't drive on roads that necessitate having to have that capability for stopping or handling so much, because we don't drive in those conditions if we can avoid it. For the Tesla, I felt it was necessary because of the value of the car and the cost of repairs, and the fact that it was rear-wheel drive only, and that it would greatly enhance my ability to use the car. So I went ahead and got winter tires for it. And it does. Very rarely does this car sit in the driveway because of weather. In the garage, I should say. It did earlier this week. And that's mainly because I didn't want to go out and be shoveling snow off that driveway at 4:45 in the morning. So I had a Subaru that was out at the top of the hill, and I had a Tesla that was in the garage down at the bottom of the hill. I took the car that was already at the top of the hill because I figured it'd be faster to clean off that car than it would be to dig a path for this one to get out. This morning when we had snow in the driveway, I figured I'd give it a go, and it backed right up, no problem. So the traction control is really impressive, but here's the caveat. If you have the rear-wheel drive only version, and you were shopping them as a CPO car, you should be aware that the traction control is very difficult to deal with. And I say that in the sense that, so for comparison, one of the first cars that I drove a lot, it wasn't my first car per se, but it was one I drove a lot, was when I lived in Germany in high school. It was a 1979 BMW 7 Series. So it was a large inline six, a large heavy German car for its time. Nowadays, of course, cars are much larger. And rear-wheel drive only, did have snow tires on it, and obviously didn't have anything fancy on it. Actually, it did have ABS brakes on it, but they never worked. So it just had a warning light that was constantly lit. It never actually worked during the time we had the car. In that car in the wintertime, you really only turn the steering wheel just a little bit, and the rest of it was done with the throttle. And that was how you steered, was with the throttle, and just a very slight, like, I want to generally slide that direction, and you would go. And it did not handle great in the snow, but it was manageable by, steering with your foot. Tesla's traction control is very, very good, and it will kind of search out where the grip is, but at least in this version of the car, there is no real slippage that you're allowed to do. It kind of prevents that, and so you can't really steer it with the traction control on. You can't really steer it with your foot. You can kind of pitch it in a particular direction, and it will let you get away with a little bit of hooliganism as far as making a tighter turn, especially when you're understeering, just to kind of flick the back end around, which is what I used to do with the BMW. But it won't let you go too crazy doing that. It generally wants to keep you, pointed and very conventionally oriented, shall we say, in how it is approaching the road. So you go, oh, why don't you just turn off the traction control? Well, you can. But there's another problem. If you turn off the traction control in this car, is that the motor has a tremendous amount of torque. And if you combine that with a surface that has very little grip, you end up with just kind of a mess in general. And learning the nuance of being able to feel the grip and get the throttle just right so that you could steer it with your foot is just way too nuanced to actually do on the street, in my experience. It just is. There's so many variables, and it can so easily overwhelm the available traction that you're more likely to cause yourself a problem than anything else. So in short, it does drive in the snow. It does very well for a rear-wheel drive car, but you cannot drive it like a regular gas rear-wheel drive car. And that's probably the biggest difference, I would say. If you're looking, again, a CPO car in a part of the country where there's lots of snow, it's totally reasonable to get a rear-wheel drive only car. You'll want the snow tires for a variety of reasons that I've kind of outlined. But just understand that it's not like driving your old school, rear-wheel drive, like a truck or a Crown Vic or whatever it was you happen to have in the day. It's a little bit more. It's not as much fun, I guess, is one way to put it. I kind of like that. Now, it will wiggle the tail. It will, dance a little bit there, sideways, and give you a little taste for things now and then if you really want to. Try and be a little rough-handed with it to have a little bit of fun, but it's not going to get you into trouble with those systems on. So in that respect, there's my thing I just bought, flipping over. So in that respect, if you're looking for an entertaining car to go out driving in, my gosh, the Subarus are just way better, especially my old Baja that doesn't have any of the nanny devices on it. That is a car that you drive with 2 feet and you keep it sideways pretty easily. And it's a very different thing. So when it comes to, if you're buying a new Tesla, you pretty much are getting dual motor cars. And I imagine them to be more or less the same. They're not going to let you get away with a lot of sliding around or anything like that, which is good. You probably want that secure feeling. But just know that it's not, if you're used to being able to do a lot of that manual control of the pitch and the angle of the car, that these cars really don't allow that. They're really not set up for that in any way. They're just not. So that's really about all I have to say on how they drive in the snow. I've never been stuck in this car. I've had a couple times when it had to work it loose from some holes that it got into, or like the high centering that it likes to do on the top of my driveway sometimes. But overall, they're really, really good in inclement weather. They're pretty idiot-proof, especially, like I said, the traction control. You just stomp it and let the car work it out, and it won't do anything that's dramatic in the sense that it's fun, but it also won't do anything dramatic in the sense that it's stupid. So there's a certain security in that, I guess. Dual motor cars are something you don't really have much choice in anymore. If I were buying now and still had the choice, I probably would get a dual motor car. But I will say that the new cars have a lot less storage in them, and people who have them go, oh no, but it's, I had a rear-wheel drive Model S and now I have a all-wheel drive Model S and it's not really that much difference. Yeah, it's a big difference. It is. When you need to get one more suitcase in, or one more bag, or one more tarp or tent, or whatever it is you're doing with the car, it is. It makes a difference. And it is a substantial difference from one size frunk to the other. So, that just is what it is. You're never going to convince me otherwise. More storage is better than less storage. Just is. So, that's my take on that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Listening to me ramble on about cars. I hope that you have some fun this winter yourself. And we're stopping for green lights now. All right. And everybody, stay safe out there. Please subscribe if you aren't already. Tell your buddies, whoever they may be. Oh, there go the wipers. Tell your buddies, whoever they may be, to check it out as well. Still trying to get those numbers up. Maybe I'll have more interesting things to say when I get more comments and stuff like that. I'm happy to take your questions or your comments. And I will see you on the flip side. Bye, everybody.